welcome everybody. We got some
full table.
Yeah, a full table. Oldie but goodies here.
Shots fired.
No, you thought.
I didn't take it that way.
You thought I was talking to you, Eric, but I was talking to this man right next to me.
Hello.
It's been a while. Tyler, welcome back.
I think it's good to be back.
Missed you. Spencer, good to have you back as well.
It's good to be here.
Got Zach in the house as usual. And I don't know if I want to claim you, but my daughter Faith, depending on what she says.
Joe Spawn.
Oh, thanks, Dad.
Say hello, Faith.
Hi.
Okay, so if you have brilliant things to say, you are so my daughter.
Thank you.
Other than that, you're Eric's daughter.
Oh.
So Eric Mejia in the house.
Welcome.
Eric, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. We're excited about this. So hey, listen. We have here at this table not only at least one Gen Zer among us. We have we have more? Like, I gotta look.
No.
Yeah, we just have one.
We settled
Okay.
this.
All right,
Solid one.
good. We have one Gen Zer among us. We have a couple of millennials and some
Y.
Gen X. All right. So we're pretty well rounded here. All of us are working with Gen Z millennials. We've been doing that for a long time now. And we got a problem that everybody's been talking about for a long time. I thought we might have a different take. This crowd might have a little different take on that. Gen Z has left the church, and I don't know if they're coming back. So, what's going on out there? What are you guys seeing? We're hearing the stats. We're seeing stuff. Zach, you had some numbers in your head. What were a couple of those?
Yeah, so I read that 1 out of every 2 Gen Zer that graduates high school leaves the church or leaves their faith, and then hopefully will come back at some point.
Yeah.
But as a whole, there's a rise in like nuns, people that just don't know what they believe, and spiritual nomads.
They meant like Catholic nuns.
Yeah, nuns. There's a rise in nuns.
Yeah. So
Don't know what they believe.
yeah, like not claiming.
Yeah, I stand by what I said.
Yeah, to go deeper on that though, so like in the 60s, that was like maybe 5% of America claimed they were in that category of non-religious or non-whatever. I'm just not claiming anything. And with Gen Z, it's like 30-something%.
Huge.
It's a third. It's a third. The number of atheists alone in Gen Z has doubled from just millennials. So we're talking like in a 15-year span. So crazy.
So like if you looked at your friends in high school, what percentage would you give it? Go to church.
I would say that probably over 50% of the high schoolers that actually do go to church are being forced to go to church.
Fair.
Yeah. So I wouldn't say a lot of them go willingly.
I would come back and say that's pretty much ongoing from beyond this generation.
But isn't that the point though? Like Gen Xers stop making their kids go to church.
I think
and then
that's the point
No one
where I want to
goes.
go to is that I think it's not the point of people being forced. I think kids have been forced to go to church for a long time. And I think that starts some of that. But then we got to the place where we started having it's okay now, right? The Gen Xers went, hey, my parents did this. I hated it. So guess what? You get a choice.
So the problem could be in the Gen X parent who got forced and dragged to church like we did, and we're like, we're not doing that to our kid.
I think that's where I think a lot of where this is stemming from. It's not just the epidemic isn't starting with the kids right now. I think it started 2 generations ago with Gen Xers who said, "Hey, I don't like this, and guess what? I've made up my mind that when I become a parent or I have kids, I'm going to give them choices." And I think it's been I think it's caused a whole bunch of ripples in the church now. And now we've just gone from generation to generation where it's becoming more like now we get don't have to go at all. You know what? You don't need to believe anymore because guess what? I don't even really believe anymore. And I'm your parent. So I think it's just kind of trickled down and it's only going to get worse.
Yeah, I'd say let's just keep piggybacking off of that. So my grandma would say, I had a drug problem growing up, and this is like my straight-laced Pentecostal grandma. She was drugged to church every time it was open. That was her joke. And so, they were made to go. There was a way that things were, and it was black and white. This is how it is. This is what we do. And we're moving away from that in a generation. But now I think you also see parents that are super, super busy. So if parents have the ability to make the most influence on their students or teenagers, their kids, and they're not feeling it, they're not going to make their kid do it, they're super busy, it all just kind of creates this perfect storm.
But that's interesting, because if you're busy, when we get busy, what's the first thing we do as humans? We cut all the non-important items.
Yeah.
So somewhere along the way, church lost value.
Yeah.
It lost value to first Gen X, and then it's trickled down to Gen Z. So where did things move away? How did church lose value in the sight of a generation? Why did people put it to the back burner when we got busy?
So I have a thought, and it's an obscure one, but I'd like to hear your guys' take on it. So I kind of tie the leaving of the church to divorce rate. And so I don't remember who I was speaking to, but we actually had a conversation about why there's so many mattress stores and why it makes sense. And this is really strange, but they talked about there's so many mattress stores because there's now more split households than ever before.
All right, this is interesting. This is a good opportunity to introduce our brother Neil in the house in the background here. Our resident fact checker has been waiting for something. Neil, we need to know what the divorce rate in America is today. When you find something, you let us know.
Yeah, so he'll pop in, right? So,
yeah, he will.
So I have a belief that through turmoil and through split families, they don't want to force their kids into something that they naturally just don't like doing.
40 to 50% of marriage couples in the United States go
40 to 50%. 40 to 50%.
So I feel like through turmoil, through all those issues that they're going through divorces, that they're not forcing their kids to go to church, and it's kind of taking a back burner through a lot of family issues.
I want to piggyback on that because I think it's a good road to travel down, because I think you get that 40 to 50%. We're talking, national, and then you break it down into the church level, and it's about the same percentage.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Mm-hmm. So not only are we looking at it as a whole, right now we're looking at it within the church.
Well, what happened to couples that pray together, stay together? What happened to that, man?
Well, so I'll go back to the point where we started from a couple decades ago, where church lost its umph, where church became how cool can we make it, how great can we entertain, how much can we provide something that'll get somebody to come back, and not really change our metric of what success is within the church. It became how many butts and seats, how much money is being brought in, and had nothing to do with transformation anymore. It had everything to do with, well, we had this many people here, we're doing really good. Right?
But at the same time that's occurring in our culture, we have another kind of narrative that's saying, you don't transformed. You're perfect the way you are.
Sure.
Be who you are.
Yeah.
There's no need for transformation.
Absolutely.
What the church sees is off is just natural. That's who you are. Be that.
And I think that's a great point of where this is kind of rolled into now. Why it's lost its significance, why the church is now on the back burner, because we're no longer seeing who Jesus is and what Jesus can do and how he changes people. Instead, we're just seeing how to make you better, right? Let's we got to throw a little Bible in here. That's not the process. The process is to be different. The process is to be like him, not a better version of me, right? So, and yet that's what the church has gone to. So with that, why the divorce rate within the church is matching what is happening out there, because I'm becoming a better version of me, but yet me has a lot of issues. Me has stuff that I don't even know how to deal with, but I've been told by the church now that it's okay to keep my issues as long as I'm somewhat becoming and doing good things.
Zach, you look like you wanted to jump in and say something.
No, I think Tim Keller was talking about that shift recently, like from objective to subjective, from what is true to what do I feel is true, and that's what guides the next generation. But I was thinking real quick. I was reading a book called Growing Young, which is all about helping churches not grow old but to grow younger and get young people connected to the church. And it seems like what applies to the students applies to the parents also. And number one on that list was, be real about who Jesus is. Yeah. Be real about what Jesus does. Like, they're not looking for something more. They're looking to be challenged and push forward. So,
Faith.
I guess so. When I think about this problem, I think I approach it more from like I don't think the average high schooler wants to go to church because they don't want to put the work into building relationships with other people at church. And I feel like church is really about relationships you build with other Christians and fellowship.
That's a good one.
And so I just I attend church, but I don't go to my youth group, and it is partially because I don't want to put the work into making relationships with people who I don't think I can relate to. So,
but you can't.
Church is like a weird mashup of people. I mean, it has a tendency to
it's
draw.
a real community. People are just difficult,
and
good and messy and beautiful, and all of this stuff.
So,
sure. And I think there's something to be said, Faith. I think that's such a perfect place because we've had this thing called technology now that has allowed us to no longer know what relationship is, right? Relationship to this generation is what's up, OMG, LOL, right?
It's communication.
It's not even you don't even know how to communicate.
It's bad communication.
Anymore, right? There's no, I don't know how to have a conversation. Let's be honest, I really don't know how to come up to somebody that I don't know at church and say, hey, what's up? Right? Instead, it's like,
I've actually seen, to your point, on Facebook, on a worship leader website, actually, worship leader forum, they were discussing the rise of online campuses.
Yeah.
Everything's through social media. And they like to twist it and say that it's actually a way to get people that are already online back into the church.
Sure.
But I don't think that's actually what's happening. It's so you can attend somebody's church that's a celebrity pastor that's 3,000 miles away.
That's the danger of it for sure. But I think those relationships on your phone, like who sends me the best memes or shares my content, likes, comments, like those all play to my feelings. These relationships make me feel good.
Absolutely.
And relationships don't always make you feel good. So that's super
That's
tough.
the thing. It's always safe. I mean, that's the battle. The church is what the church is. It's real people battling through these things. And that's not near as sexy as having some memes or something on Pinterest or Tumblr or whatever it is that you can go to, get that quick advice that makes you feel better.
He's emo.
Whatever.
Yeah, Tyler's
I don't know.
a Tumblr guy.
There we go. But either way, like, you can go there, get what you want, makes you feel good, and it sounds intelligent because they packed it into 2 lines, and then you get out. Or you can stop that conversation with someone because, oh, sorry, man, I got busy. Didn't get to finish that conversation with you. You don't have to really go down any of those roads when you're staring face to face with someone who is either calling you out, trying to build you up, has an actual expectation because you're trying to grow, they're trying to grow. There's none of that on there.
Sure.
I also feel like a lot where like that miscommunication like comes in play is also like I feel like high schoolers don't want to think about things either. So when they think about going to church, they think about like deep questions and actually having to like put effort into something, and they just really don't want to like think about answering questions or think about having
there's tension there.
Deep conversations with people.
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing is the value of relationships. The more you can get a student connected to somebody inside the church, and not just one somebody, but multiple somebodies. And relationship all starts with like some sort of shared experience or shared interest. You got to find that common ground. Then the more sticky them.
And that's a good pivot because here we all see the problem, right? If you're a church leader or a youth pastor listening to this, even a parent of a teen that you wish would go to church listening to this, if we continue down this path, there isn't going to be much of a church in our country a few decades from now.
Absolutely.
Right? We're already dwindling, but it's going to escalate and we're going to shrink quicker. So what do we think needs to shift? What needs to change in order to reset really not just church as the institution, but reset like the idea of purpose. Why are you here on this earth? Creator, God into the hearts and minds of young people. Which, by the way, young people when we're surveying them, say that they're religious in some way, maybe not religious, spiritual.
I think that's a
Right.
better word.
Spiritual?
Yeah.
Neil, how many Gen Zers consider themselves spiritual? Let us know if you find an answer to that.
So that was
Yeah.
that was actually my next point. My one of 2 points that I had for this conversation was I believe that we're in the era of reason again. It's happened before, spiritual liberalism. So we're now in the era of reason. People want to know answers, and they want to know tangible answers. So we're in a place now where it's very hard to answer everything, especially when we're trying to also, as church members and Christians, leaning into the gray, to quote Thrice there. So we're definitely in a weird spot, and I think that's why we're seeing the rise of New Ageism as well, is because they're trying to put answers to things that don't necessarily make sense to us here on Earth. So I think that a lot of Gen Zers, they're looking for answers, and they're looking to answers for tough questions, and I don't think the church has always provided those answers in a substantial way. So.
Yeah, I couldn't find a specific one for the Gen Z, but it says that about 27% of
27%.
U.S. adults in
All right.
the United States consider themselves spiritual.
About a third. About a third of adults in the U.S. consider themselves spiritual. All right, interesting. So,
What year was that?
April 25th and June 4th of this year.
all right.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
All right.
Recency.
That
So-
already sounds like way lower
Yeah,
than
for
I'm
real.
comfortable with.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Or that the
And,
kids are even lower. obviously.
Yeah, and I think it's
Oh, yeah.
probably just dipping. I know even for millennials, it was like millennials make up close to 20% of the population and less than 10% of the church. Like you're seeing a dip where we're severely underrepresented. But
All right. So, Eric, you pastor a church, one of few churches that actually does a great job reaching young people. What do you see in general needs to shift? Like what? Or maybe what do you see that's working for you? I don't know.
Well, the
what
first
are we
thing that I
missing?
would come and say what I've. First of all, you got to change your metric of success, and no longer how many people are here, but what's happening in people's lives. And I had a great conversation yesterday. A guy that's been coming to the church, he probably falls into the older millennial. He's 30. He's probably right at the edge of what the millennial crowd is, and grew up in the church, walked away from the church, served in the military, has PTSD, has a bunch of stuff that he didn't figure out he had until years after, but tried to wonder why things weren't working. And he starts coming to the church, and it's funny because when I first met him, the guy's 6'8", 400 pounds. He's this monster dude. I was at his house yesterday, and he's showing me a gun collection that I was just like, whoa. But he stops and he says, Erica says, man, I have not felt this good in so long. And I said, well, what do you mean? He said, ever since I just allowed God back into my life, I've seen change. And he said, and the change came because he said that people started loving him who didn't even know him, right? And so the shift, I think, is that measure of success that says what's happening in people's lives over who is here. And the whole relational, what I've tagged it within the life of our church is relational discipleship. It's loving people, right? And how can I meet them where they're at? And not just try to say, if you're not where I'm at, we can't hang out. But it's more like, hey, of this tier of generation that would say, I'm always looking backwards, meaning if I'm in my 60s, I should be looking in my 50s for that person that I can love on. If I'm in my 50s, I'm looking to my 40s, so on, and then just working our way down. But I'm never done. Raising kids, right? And I've had people in the life of the church point blank say this to me: I'm done raising kids. When I've said, hey man, would you meet with this younger guy? Would you hang out with this person? And that was the response that I got. And so now we have churches that have this older population in them who aren't doing anything.
Yeah, and that and so for a lot of people listening and think, well, it should be an easy fix. Like, we do need to shift how we measure things, but it's not an easy fix because it's the institution of church is not built on that, right? If you are a church planner and you're starting a church and you're getting funding from somewhere, most likely, that funding is based on how many people they expect you to reach within a given time frame. If you're not reaching that or growing at a certain level, then, funds will eventually be cut off or you'll be replaced. So it is a quantity. Nobody's going and saying, Eric, I'm going to give you, I want to seed you $200,000 over the next 3.5 years. And I want to see, what do I want to see? I want to see you have, I want to see a couple of people's lives transform. No. I expect you to be out of, conditional, the temporary warehouse that you're in, the school that you're setting up, right? Because you need to be able to pay for rent. You need to be able to pay for a building. In order to do that, you've got to have tithers. In order to have tithers, you got to have people attending. It's a system. It's a business. And you can over-spiritualize it any way you want, but as long as we keep treating church like a business, it is supposed to die. And so maybe that's the best thing that does happen. Maybe we shrink back to, smaller, local bodies that don't have a place to meet but a home or a small warehouse somewhere.
Yeah. Then that kind of almost forces those intergenerational relationships where the old people are able to play spiritual parents to some of these younger people. I mean, hypothetically, Faith, if a bunch of older guys said hey, would you share your voice on Gen Z? Maybe we're going to shoot a podcast. Would you be willing to hang out and share?
Here I am.
Right, yeah.
But
exactly. I think they'd be willing to spend time with older people, especially if it's focused in on an interest in that young person that maybe that old person has a ton of experience in. You hang out, I think of your wrestling mentor. He's an older guy and he's a little bit crazy, but he shows up at every one of your matches and teaches you his ways. He's like the Miyagi to your Danielson.
Thank you.
And through that relationship, has influence.
So what I hear you saying is, unless we get Gen Zers meaningfully involved in the church in a way that's important to the church, and then we're not going to really see them get involved.
Yeah, I do think that's another sticky point. If they have ownership over something, even if it's small, if they have buy-in and they feel like they're a part of this community, a part of the body, they're more likely to stick around.
Absolutely.
I don't know. I feel like the only way to get Generation Zers or high schoolers to actually do something other than smoking out or looking on their phones and playing video games all day is to actually get them interested in something they're passionate about, because that's when they start talking and wanting to get involved and getting excited. But I feel like a lot of high schoolers don't know what they're passionate about, and so they just kind of do whatever and wait.
So in other words, don't put you on the usher team. Don't have you greeting. Don't have you passing the communion plate.
Right.
And you can babysit. We need help in childcare.
Yeah, that's nothing I'm gonna jump to do. I'm probably gonna be I don't.
What is Gen Z passionate about?
Weird stuff. Weird, different stuff.
Smoking out.
Right.
Social media, all those things.
That's a new ministry.
So I think it's a mix between those two. It is finding the interest that they are already interested in. That's bridging the gaps, and then honestly, just making way for a new generation coming in. That's a little bit harder to understand for older generation. That's always going to be the case. But part of it is just the elements of giving some kind of opportunity for them to actually play a real role in, grow, be a part of something, and the encouragement. I mean, for me, growing up, I was just this hardcore kid that, going to shows all the time. When I started following Jesus, I went to a very, very Southern Baptist church. I was a blue Mohawk among a bunch of white hair, old people, but they let me in there, didn't judge me on that, and gave me opportunities to actually help out and do things, encouraged me, even though they told me they liked my hair and my, style, and I know they were lying, but that was okay. They loved me really, really well in that, and that was already enough. It doesn't matter that their stuff at that time was boring. Not that we need to get better about what we offer, but those are two elements that
I think that's kind of what Eric said. is that we need to get the older generation to invest in the younger people genuinely, and then coming alongside and letting them, because it's going to be different for everybody, letting them try to understand what they're passionate about.
Yeah, that was one of the 6 keys to the growing young church. One was empathy for the next generation.
Absolutely.
It kind of starts with praying and caring.
Man, you guys, there's so much good content on this. So I really appreciate everybody's thoughts. Anyone have any kind of final something that they were thinking about that they wanted to kind of say in relation to this topic?
I would say, as I hear just kind of the passion and what are they passionate about, and I do believe that this generation is a product that simply came from another generation that didn't show that, didn't know that. You look at our generation as X, there's no sense of passion. There's no sense of anything. There was just this emptiness. And I think it's just transferred on now to where, but now it's even gotten worse because there's nobody modeling that. But if you take an example, and I'll put you out here, Joe, as someone who has a daughter sitting right here, right? Who has become passionate about something and has taught their kids now how to be passionate about something. So I just take it back now to there's the issue with this generation leaving the church, but I really feel the problem is coming where the parent is trying to get the parent back to that place with purpose and passion. And I think when we begin to sow into that and figure that out is where this generation coming up is going to see something that's finally being modeled by the people that actually care about them. Yeah. And that they're looking at and they're seeing, and I really don't think until we conquer that, until we find out how to get our hands into that generation, that X generation, it's just going to continue to get worse because as we're getting older, we're getting worse. We're getting worse. You know what I'm saying? It's because we're becoming more distant from so many things because we don't care. And so we're now saying that, and we're practicing that, and we're modeling that. So it's just trickling down even more.
Yeah, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah. We've got a lot of issues, but we got a lot of hope too. We got a lot of things that we could shift that can make a great difference. And Faith, I just want you to know, great job. I claim you as my daughter.
Thanks, Dad.
You are allowed back for another podcast. Nice. So.